Elias Tyndall sat alone in his dimly lit quarters aboard the Odyssey, staring at the flickering holographic screen in front of him. The message from the Earth government was still echoing in his mind, the urgency of the mission unmistakable. They needed him, a lead scientist, someone with his expertise, to help decipher a mysterious alien signal emanating from a distant galaxy. But Elias had no desire to answer that call. Not after everything that had happened. The Odyssey was one of the most advanced starships in the fleet, its sleek hull designed for long-distance travel, equipped with experimental technology that could push humanity's reach farther into the unknown than ever before. Yet, to Elias, it all felt like a trap. A trap he was too afraid to step into. His past was full of failed missions, shattered lives, and a single, haunting loss that left him scared. He had promised himself that he would never again be part of something this grand, this dangerous. Yet here he was, still alone, still haunted, and now facing the most important decision of his life. Professor Tyndall, the voice of Captain Kira Singh, crackled over the intercom. "We're launching in an hour. Report to the bridge. You're needed." Elias sighed, rubbing his temples. Captain Singh, a stern, no-nonsense leader, had made it clear that his talents were non-negotiable. She had been persistent, relentless even. Despite Elias's protests, she made it clear that there was no one else who could help them unravel the mystery of the signal. Her belief in his expertise seemed genuine, but to Elias, it only felt like a burden. He stood up slowly, his fingers brushing over the surface of his desk, as if searching for something to anchor him. There was nothing left to do but go. After a moment of hesitation, he picked up his datapad, a constant companion during his most brilliant and painful moments, and left his quarters. The corridors of the Odyssey were quiet as he made his way toward the bridge. The crew, a mix of seasoned spacefarers and eager young recruits, went about their duties with a sense of purpose that Elias couldn't shake. He didn't belong here, not anymore. He wasn't like them. Their excitement felt foreign, even dangerous. The universe was full of unknowns, but Elias had learned long ago that some truths were better left uncovered. He reached the bridge, where Captain Singh stood, her sharp eyes immediately locking onto him as he entered. "Tyndall, good to see you," she said with a nod, though there was no trace of warmth in her voice. She was all business. "We're entering the Clixon Rift in 3 hours. That's where the signal's originating from. We don't know what's waiting for us out there, but we'll need your expertise to make sense of it. We're counting on you." Elias felt the weight of her words settle on his shoulders. He knew that his mind was the key to understanding whatever lay hidden in the rift, but the thought of it terrified him. What if the signal led them to something better left undisturbed? What if humanity wasn't ready to confront whatever ancient intelligence was out there? He thought back to the last time he had been part of a mission that sounded so innocent, so necessary, and how it had ended in catastrophe. But there was no turning back now. The Odyssey was already in motion, its engines humming steadily as the stars stretched into streaks of light outside the viewport. The rift, a massive, unexplored region of space, loomed ahead like a vast, silent void. The signal they were chasing seemed to call to him, almost as if it knew he was coming, knew the questions that burned inside him. He nodded grimly at Captain Singh. "I'll do my best," he muttered, though the words felt hollow. As he took his seat at the science console, Elias's heart pounded in his chest. Somewhere out there, something was waiting. And for the first time in a long time, he wasn't sure if he was ready to face it. The Odyssey glided into the Clixon Rift, a region of space so dark and enigmatic that even the most advanced navigational instruments struggled to chart its vast, shifting borders. Elias sat in the science bay, his fingers hovering over the control panel as he monitored the ship's approach. The ambient glow from the screens bathed his face in pale light, highlighting the deep furrows of his brow. Despite the sleek precision of the ship and the calm professionalism of its crew, Elias felt an unease settle in the pit of his stomach. It wasn't just the unknowns of space, it was the signal that haunted him. It had been so specific, so insistent, pulsing through the void with unnatural regularity. It almost felt alive. "Signal's getting stronger," said Dr. Lena Ortiz, the Odyssey's communications specialist, her voice crackling through the intercom. She sounded almost too calm, a stark contrast to the anxiety Elias felt. "We're getting close, but there's something strange about the readings. This isn't just a transmission. It's a pattern, a form of intelligence." Elias's fingers clenched into fists. "Keep me posted," he replied, his voice steady despite the tension that coiled in his chest. His eyes drifted to the monitor, where a map of the rift flickered. The signal's source was located within a massive nebula that pulsed in rhythmic waves. It was almost like a heartbeat. As the ship continued deeper into the rift, an eerie silence enveloped the bridge and the rest of the ship. It was as if the vast emptiness of space had swallowed their surroundings, leaving nothing but the faint hum of the ship's engines. The stars outside, once bright and brilliant, were now distant, pinpricks of light lost in a void. The crew's conversations had become muted, almost reverent, as if they were all afraid to disturb the silence. Suddenly, a sharp, unexpected jolt rattled the ship, throwing Elias against his seat. The lights flickered for a moment, and then went completely dark. "Report." Captain Singh's voice cut through the darkness, sharp and commanding. Elias quickly brought up the ship's diagnostics. A spike in the rift's gravitational anomalies had caused a temporary disruption in the ship's power systems. The artificial gravity failed for a brief moment, and the emergency lights flickered to life. "We're stable," Captain, Elias said, tapping at the console. "But there's a massive energy disturbance right outside. The rift's gravitational fields are playing havoc with our systems. It's unlike anything I've seen before." Lena's voice came through again, her tone more strained now. "The signal's changing. It's evolving, almost as if it's reacting to us being here." Before Elias could respond, the ship shuddered again, and then an unmistakable sound echoed throughout the ship, a low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. The same hum that had been broadcasting through space, only now it was inescapable, alive and omnipresent. "We're not alone," Captain Singh whispered, a rare moment of uncertainty in her voice. The hum grew louder, now filling every corner of the ship, and Elias felt it reverberate deep in his chest. He wasn't sure if it was a threat or an invitation. "Prepare for landing," Captain Singh ordered, her voice regaining its composure. "We've reached the source. Get to the docking bay. We're going down." Elias's mind raced. As the Odyssey descended into the nebula, the strange signal seemed to grow stronger. The ship's hull groaned in protest as it navigated through the turbulent energy fields. The hum intensified, now an almost physical presence, pressing in on every part of the ship. Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, no, studied. The alien signal was no longer just a transmission. It was a presence, one that had been waiting for them, almost as if it had been anticipating their arrival. And as they descended into the darkness of the nebula, Elias couldn't help but wonder, what did the signal want? And what would they find when they reached the source? The ship finally broke through the turbulent clouds of the nebula, revealing a massive structure, a forgotten outpost, ancient and decayed, floating like a ghost in the void. It was larger than anything Elias had ever seen, covered in strange symbols that glowed faintly, even in the blackness of space. The structure seemed to hum in response to the Odyssey's presence. Landing in 5 minutes, Captain Singh called. "Everyone prepare for extraction. I want all teams ready. This could be the discovery of a lifetime." But Elias wasn't sure if that was something to be celebrated. The closer they got, the more he could feel the oppressive weight of something ancient, something powerful, and he couldn't shake the feeling, malevolent. As the Odyssey touched down, Elias steeled himself. Whatever awaited them on that station, it was not going to be easy to face. And as the hatch doors opened, the air that hit him was thick with the scent of age and decay. Something was out there, something that had been waiting for them. The moment the hatch doors of the Odyssey opened, a chill swept through the air. It wasn't the cold of space, but something deeper, more unsettling. Elias stepped into the abandoned alien outpost, his boots making a soft clink against the metallic floor. His breath came in shallow, nervous bursts. The station was dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of symbols etched into the walls, an ancient, alien language that was both mesmerizing and ominous. The silence inside the station was almost suffocating. No sounds of wind, no distant hums of machinery, just an eerie stillness that seemed to press in from all sides. The structure was massive, sprawling outward in every direction, as if it were built to house something far beyond the scope of human understanding. But nothing, no life, no movement, suggested that it had been inhabited for millennia. "Elias, you're with me," Captain Singh's voice crackled through his comm unit. "We need your expertise on these readings. Keep close." Elias nodded but couldn't shake the sensation that the walls were watching him. As he moved deeper into the station, he felt the weight of its history bearing down on him. Every step seemed to stir something beneath the surface, something that had been buried for far too long. The crew moved quickly through the station's long corridors, their footsteps reverberating off the cold walls. The further they went, the more the air seemed to thicken, as if the very space they walked through was rejecting them. It wasn't long before they reached the central chamber, an enormous room that housed a massive crystalline structure at its core. The crystal shimmered with an eerie, otherworldly light, its facets shifting and warping as if it were alive. The energy that radiated from it was palpable, thrumming in the air like a heartbeat. "Is this it?" Lena Ortiz whispered, awe in her voice as she stepped forward, her hand reaching out, but hesitating just before touching the crystal. Elias's heart raced. "It's more than just a signal," he muttered to himself, stepping closer. "It's a relic, an artifact. Something ancient, something sentient." The crystal pulsed again, sending a shockwave of energy through the room. Elias staggered back, his head spinning as the images flooded his mind. Visions of distant stars collapsing, galaxies shifting in impossible ways, and beings of unimaginable power watching from the edges of space. The visions were disjointed and surreal, but one thing was clear: this was the source of the signal. The Arithnar had left it behind. But why? Lena's voice broke through the disorienting flood of images. "What are you seeing, Elias?" she asked, her voice tight with concern. Elias blinked, trying to shake off the weight of the visions. "It's a message. Or a warning. This crystal holds the knowledge of the Arithnar. Everything they learned, everything they knew about the universe. But there's something else." He paused, staring at the shifting crystal. They didn't just abandon it. They locked it away. It's too dangerous to use. "Dangerous how?" Captain Singh asked, her tone sharp. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" Elias didn't have an answer. The visions continued, growing more vivid, more coherent. He could see it now. The Arithnar, a race of beings that once ruled this galaxy, had discovered something catastrophic, the true nature of the universe. A universe bound to an end cycle, a cosmic reset that occurred every few millennia. A cycle of destruction that wiped clean the slate of existence, only to start anew. And the Arithnar had been the first to understand it. But there was more. The cycle wasn't just an inevitability. It was something that could be controlled, shaped. The Arithnar had tried to bend the cycle to their will, to manipulate reality itself. And in the end, they failed. Elias? Lena's voice was insistent now. What do you mean controlled? What did they do? Elias swallowed hard. The truth hit him with the force of a physical blow. They tried to use the cycle to remake the universe. They believed they could break the cycle, stop it from resetting. They thought they could become gods. A terrible realization spread like wildfire through the room. And the consequences of that attempt, they were disastrous. The Arithnar destroyed themselves trying to control it. The crystal pulsed again, almost as if acknowledging Elias's words. It was alive, vibrating with knowledge, with power, and the burden of the truth. They had come here to find answers, but now Elias wondered if they had made a grave mistake. The power to manipulate the cycle was beyond anything humanity could fathom. To even comprehend it was dangerous. And yet, the crystal seemed to offer a way forward. Elias's hand hovered over the crystal's surface. If we unlock this, if we access the knowledge inside, we could understand the cycle. We could change everything. He looked up at Captain Singh, his voice low. But at what cost? Before anyone could answer, a shrill, high-pitched noise filled the air, like the sound of metal scraping against metal. A warning. And then the walls of the chamber began to shift, as if the station itself were awakening. A deep rumble echoed through the structure, and Elias knew they weren't alone. It was a trap. The station had been waiting for them, and now it was beginning to fight back. The rumbling grew louder, vibrating through the chamber and into Elias's bones. The walls shifted again, and with a grinding sound, a massive door on the far side of the room began to open. The air grew colder, thick with the sense of something ancient stirring to life. It wasn't just the station. It was them, the Arithnar, or whatever remnants of their consciousness still lingered in the dark heart of this place. "Captain, we need to move," Elias shouted, backing away from the crystal, his mind racing. "This place is a trap. We've triggered something." Captain Singh wasted no time. "Everyone on your feet. We're retreating back to the ship. Now." The crew moved quickly, but the door had fully opened, revealing a narrow passageway that stretched into the unknown depths of the station. Something in the air seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat. A mechanical hum echoed from within, and from the shadows beyond the door a figure emerged. It was an entity not fully human but not entirely alien either, part mechanical, part organic, with glowing blue symbols running across its body, pulsing in rhythm with the vibrations of the station. It stepped forward with unnatural grace, its movements fluid and predatory. "Stay back," Captain Singh ordered, drawing her sidearm and aiming it at the figure. But the entity didn't stop. Instead, it tilted its head, regarding the humans with an unsettling, almost knowing gaze. It didn't speak, but its presence was unmistakable. It was aware of them, and more than that, it was waiting. "Is it Arithnar?" Lena whispered, her voice trembling. Elias could barely concentrate on her words. His mind was whirling, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The figure before them wasn't just a remnant of the Erithnar. It was something worse, something that had been forged by their hubris. The signal, the crystal, it had all led them here, to this moment, to the awakening of whatever was locked within this place. The creature took another step forward, and Elias felt a cold wave of energy ripple through the room. The air grew thick with a strange static, and the walls once again began to shift, closing off the exits. They were trapped. "I'm not asking again," Captain Singh said, her voice steady but strained. "Move now." The crew rushed toward the exit, but the moment they turned to flee, the creature moved with terrifying speed, blocking their path. Its form flickered for a moment, as if its very existence were unstable, but it reappeared instantly in front of them. Then, a voice, deep, resonant, and incomprehensible, boomed in Elias's mind. "You have disturbed what should never be disturbed. You have come too close to the truth." Elias's head spun as the voice pressed in on him. It was everywhere, inside his thoughts, inside his soul, and it felt like it was speaking directly to him. It was as if the creature's consciousness was linked to the station itself, and now that they had triggered its defenses, it was trying to reach into their very being. "The crystal," Elias murmured, his voice barely audible. "It's not just a relic, it's a prison. The Arithnar imprisoned themselves here, trying to stop what they had unleashed. And now we've broken the seal." The figure's voice echoed again, more forcefully this time. "You will never leave this place. You will be lost to the cycle." A blast of energy erupted from the figure, sending a shockwave through the room. The crew scattered as the air crackled with power, and the entire station seemed to hum with malevolent intent. Elias's body jerked with the force of the blast, and his vision swam as he fought to regain his balance. "Get to the ship," Captain Singh ordered again, her voice a desperate command. But as she turned to lead them, the floor beneath their feet began to crack. The station was tearing itself apart, or perhaps awakening fully. Elias's mind raced. They were dealing with something far beyond the scope of anything humanity had ever encountered. A force born from the collapse of an ancient civilization, something powerful enough to manipulate time and space. The Arithnar had paid the price for attempting to control the end cycle, and now it seemed that humanity would pay as well. But there was a glimmer of hope. The crystal, the entity, everything in this forsaken place, it wasn't just a relic. It was a key to understanding the cycle, the universe's true nature. If they could just access the full power of the crystal, they could break free, escape this place, and understand what had been hidden for so long. But at what cost? "Captain, I think I can shut it down," Elias called, his voice steadying as he saw the control panel embedded in the wall next to the crystal. The panel was ancient, yet its interface was somehow familiar. He ran to it, fingers flying over the archaic symbols that seemed to react to his touch. He could feel the pulse of the crystal resonating in his chest, almost as if it were alive. "No time," Captain Singh shouted, grabbing his arm. "We need to go now, Elias." But it was too late. The walls of the station were closing in, and Elias knew that whatever decision they made here, whether to run or stay, would decide the fate of not just their crew, but the entire galaxy. Elias's fingers hovered over the glowing interface, his mind torn between the call of the unknown and the overwhelming need to escape. The station around them trembled, groaning like a beast in its death throes, and the entity, whatever it was, loomed ever closer. Its form flickered and shifted, as if it were not bound by the laws of physics. But the dark energy radiating from it was undeniably real, an oppressive weight that seemed to press down on everything in its vicinity. The air was thick with static. Elias's heart raced as the interface lit up beneath his touch, responding to his presence. Symbols on the screen twisted, rearranged themselves, and for a brief moment, Elias saw the patterns of the end cycle unfold before him in a flash of understanding. A vast, incomprehensible network of energy flows and cosmic laws, a never-ending loop that controlled the very fabric of existence. But in the depths of his mind, he heard the voice again, the one that had echoed inside his thoughts since they entered the station. "You're not meant to understand. The truth is not yours to wield. You have come too far. You are too late." The entity advanced, its movements jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with tangled strings, its glowing blue eyes fixed on Elias. It was speaking, but not in words. Its thoughts flooded his consciousness, crashing through his mental defenses like a tidal wave. The Arithnar sought to master the cycle. They failed. They are gone. You will fail too. Captain Singh's voice broke through his haze of confusion. "Elias, snap out of it. We don't have time for this." Her words grounded him, but the pull of the crystal's knowledge was still there, lingering at the edges of his mind. He could feel it, like a voice calling from the depths of space, promising answers to questions he hadn't even known to ask. The temptation was overwhelming. "Do you understand what this means?" Elias said, his voice low, filled with a strange awe. "We could reshape the cycle, Captain. We could break the boundaries of time. No more resets, no more endings. We could." "No," Captain Singh interrupted sharply, her voice cutting through the fog of his thoughts. That's what the Arithnar thought. They were consumed by their own hubris. This station, this thing, is not a blessing. It's a warning. Elias looked at her, but her eyes were hard with resolve. She was right. The Arithnar had tried to control something they could not comprehend, and in doing so, they had destroyed themselves. Was he any different? Could humanity truly wield such power without becoming like the ones who had perished here? Behind him, the rumble of the station grew louder, and the flickering lights cast long, twisted shadows across the walls. The entity's form began to shift, its body distorting as if stretching beyond natural limits. Elias could sense it. It was getting ready to act. It was going to stop them, to prevent them from leaving. "We have to go," Captain Singh repeated, her tone firm. "Now, Elias, we're running out of time." But Elias couldn't tear himself away. Not yet. There was something deeper within the crystal, something that called to him. He reached out again, his fingers almost grazing the surface of the interface, when a flash of light erupted from the crystal. A burst of energy shot through the room, knocking him to the ground, and the world seemed to collapse inward. For a moment, there was nothing, just silence. The heavy hum of the station faded, and the oppressive pressure in the air lifted. But as Elias slowly regained his senses, he realized that the station was changing. The walls were crumbling, warping in on themselves, as if the structure were fighting against the very energy they had awakened. "Elias!" Captain Singh shouted, running to him. She pulled him to his feet, her grip strong. "We need to move. The crystal's destabilizing everything. It's breaking apart. If we don't leave now, we're not getting out." He shook his head, his mind racing. The crystal was alive, and whatever knowledge it held, it wasn't just a weapon. It was a trap. The Arithnar had placed it here, not as a key to power, but as a means to prevent anyone else from making the same mistakes they had. "Run," Elias said, his voice sharp with realization. "We have to leave now." The crew didn't hesitate. They turned and sprinted for the exit, dodging debris as the station buckled around them. The walls cracked open, spewing out waves of raw energy that threatened to engulf everything. Behind them, the entity that had once seemed so powerful was beginning to disintegrate, its form unraveling as the station collapsed into itself. It was as though it were being erased from existence. But the station wasn't done. The ground shook, and a loud, grinding noise echoed through the corridors. Something was still resisting them. Elias glanced back just in time to see the crystal pulse one final time, sending a surge of energy through the entire station. "We're not going to make it," Lena Ortiz cried out, her voice panicked. "We will," Captain Singh shouted as the exit finally came into view. The docking bay, their only hope of escape, was just ahead. The ship's engines hummed in the distance, already powered up and ready to leave. As they reached the ship's hatch, Elias hesitated for just a moment, looking back at the dying station. The pulse from the crystal had stopped, and the entity, whatever it had been, was gone. The rift in space, the signal, the station, it all seemed to fade away, like a memory slipping through his fingers. "Elias," Captain Singh's voice snapped him back to the present. "No." He nodded, and without another thought, he jumped onto the ship's ramp as it began to close. They had escaped. For now. But Elias knew one thing. The truth of the end cycle, of what the Arithnar had discovered, was far from over. The universe was broken, and they had just glimpsed the cracks. The question now was whether humanity would follow the same path, or learn from it. The Odyssey's engines hummed steadily as it tore through the void, its hull shaking slightly from the rapid acceleration. Outside, the distant stars were nothing more than specks of light in the blackness. Inside the ship, the crew was silent, each of them lost in their own thoughts, grappling with the enormity of what they had just encountered. Elias sat at the command table, staring at the data on his console. The feed from the station was still live, though heavily fragmented. Pieces of the Arithnar's history, their last messages, their warnings, they all cycled through his mind like a broken record. The truth they had uncovered, while staggering, had also left him with more questions than answers. He couldn't shake the feeling that the crystal, the entity, the station, wasn't just a relic of the past. It was alive in some way, embedded in the very fabric of space, and that meant the threat wasn't over. "You all right?" Captain Singh's voice broke into his thoughts. She stood in the doorway of the control room, her face drawn but focused, the weight of leadership pressing on her shoulders. "You've been staring at that data for hours." Elias blinked, pulling his thoughts together. "I'm fine. Just thinking." "We all are," she said, stepping into the room and sitting across from him. "The Arithnar, whatever they were, they've left behind something that might be worse than anything we've ever faced. That entity, that thing we saw on the station. It wasn't just some guard or automaton. It was more than that." He nodded, rubbing his temples. "It wasn't trying to kill us. It was trying to stop us. It warned us, Captain, in a way that wasn't just instinctive. It knew us. It knew what we could do if we unlocked the secrets inside that crystal." "Do you think that's why the station collapsed? The Arithnar built it to contain something. But what if they didn't just build it to contain the knowledge? What if the station itself was trying to protect us from it?" Singh's voice was low but sharp, as though she was piecing together a puzzle in real time. Elias looked up at her, a sudden realization kicking into place. That's it. The crystal. It was never meant to give us power. It was meant to test us, to see if we were worthy of understanding what the Arithnar discovered. It's a prison, but also a filter. "You're saying it wanted to stop us from making the same mistakes they did." "Exactly," Elias replied. "The end cycle, What they learned, what they tried to control, it's beyond any race, any being. It's the true order of the universe. The Arithnar tried to break that order, and they destroyed themselves in the process. That entity we saw on the station, it wasn't just a failed experiment. It was part of the cycle. A guardian of sorts, bound to the station, ensuring no one could ever disrupt the balance again. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Lena Ortiz, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. But that means the cycle isn't just some theoretical concept. It's real. The end cycle isn't some abstract idea. It's happening right now, and we just stumbled into its wake. The Arithnar saw it, tried to stop it, and failed. And now it's our turn. Elias didn't know how to answer. He had seen the visions from the crystal. He had felt the truth echo in his mind, the undeniable certainty of it. The end cycle wasn't something that could be stopped. It was a natural law of the universe, as inevitable as the birth of stars or the death of galaxies. And the Arithnar's attempt to control it had triggered a chain reaction that led to their extinction. He looked at the faces of his crew, each one of them trying to make sense of the situation. They were all survivors, but what did survival mean in a universe bound to a cycle of destruction and rebirth? "Captain," Elias said, his voice steady but filled with an undercurrent of urgency, "we need to find out everything we can about the cycle. The Arithnar were the first to uncover it, but they failed. We can't make the same mistakes. If we're going to survive, we need to understand the cycle completely. We need to find out what the rest of the galaxy knows, if they know anything at all." Captain Singh nodded slowly. "I agree, but we also need to understand what this means for us, for humanity. We can't just go charging into the unknown. The galaxy isn't exactly welcoming, and there are forces out there far more powerful than us." "I know," Elias said, standing up and walking over to the viewport. The stars outside glistened like cold diamonds, endless and unforgiving. But we have no choice. The Arithnar weren't the last to discover the truth. They were just the first. The galaxy is full of beings who might have been touched by the cycle, who might be preparing for it. Whatever's coming next, we need to be ready. There was a long silence before Singh spoke again, her voice calm, but filled with determination. "Then we'll need to make some decisions. We can't do this alone. We'll need allies, information, and, most importantly, time." Elias turned back to her, his mind still reeling with the possibilities. Time is something we might not have much of. The cycle is already beginning to move again. And when it does, the universe will change, forever. The ship hummed as it continued its journey, deep into the uncharted darkness of the galaxy. Elias didn't know where they were heading, or what they would face when they arrived, but one thing was certain: humanity was no longer a passive observer of the cosmos. They were a part of something much larger, and the choices they made now could determine whether they would survive the coming storm, or become another casualty of the cycle's inevitable return. The next few weeks aboard the Odyssey were a blur of travel and preparation. The crew moved with a quiet urgency, knowing that their discovery on the Arithnar station had set them on a path they could not turn back from. Elias had pored over every piece of data they had salvaged, each piece of information from the station's records adding weight to the growing sense of unease that hung over them all. But despite their efforts, no answers came quickly. The end cycle remained an enigma, a force so vast and incomprehensible that it defied human understanding. The Arithnar had been the first to uncover its secrets, and they had been destroyed by them. Now, it seemed, humanity was being drawn into the same web. Elias sat in the ship's library, poring over an ancient database they had retrieved from a distant research station. The language was archaic, But with the help of Lena's deciphering skills, they had slowly begun to understand it. The records painted a disturbing picture. The cycle was not just an event, but a pattern, an unstoppable force that governed the rise and fall of civilizations. Every great species, from the ancient Erithnar to long-forgotten races, had encountered it. Some had even managed to manipulate it, but always at great cost. And in the end, the cycle always returned. "Captain," Elias's voice crackled through the ship's comm system. "I think I found something." Captain Singh, who had been overseeing the crew's training exercises, made her way to the library. She entered to find Elias hunched over a terminal, his face pale under the harsh light. He turned to face her, eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. "I've been digging through some old research records from the Kethran Institute. They have reports from some of the first deep space explorations. According to this, there's been a pattern, a cosmic disturbance, moving in waves throughout the galaxy. It's been happening for centuries, but only now are we seeing it in full force." Singh frowned. "So, it's been going on longer than we thought. The end cycle isn't some new phenomenon." "Exactly," Elias said, leaning in. "The cycle itself isn't new. The Kethrans believed it's been affecting the fabric of the galaxy for ages, but only recently have civilizations been able to detect it. And it's becoming stronger. Each time it resurfaces, the damage grows. The Arithnar were only the latest to fall victim to it." "But why did the Arithnar build that station?" Captain Singh asked, crossing her arms. "Why create something to trap it if they knew it couldn't be stopped?" "That's the question, isn't it?" Elias muttered, tapping the console. "From what I can gather, the Arithnar realized something. We're not the first to try and stop the cycle. Every race that has encountered it has tried. Some used technology, others tried manipulating the flow of time itself. But each one of them failed. The Arithnar thought they could contain it, but it turns out they were only a part of it." Captain Singh stared at him, understanding dawning. "You mean the cycle is a living thing? It evolves. It's not just an event that happens. It's a force that adapts." "Yes," Elias said, nodding. "The crystal we found, it's part of that force. The entity that appeared on the station. It was a manifestation of the cycle's awareness. It wasn't just an automated defense mechanism. It was alive, and it knew we had broken the seal. It's been protecting the cycle's continuity." "Then we've really done it now, haven't we?" Singh said with a grim chuckle. "We've awoken something that was never meant to be woken." Elias ran a hand through his hair, pacing in agitation. "The problem is, we're not the only ones who know. The Arithnar weren't the first to build something like that. They were just the most recent." He looked at her, his expression somber. "If the Kethrans' records are right, then there are other factions out there, ancient ones, more powerful than anything we can comprehend, that have been trying to manipulate the cycle for millennia. And now that it's become so unstable, they'll be coming for us." Captain Singh's face hardened. "We have to be ready. If we're going to stand a chance against what's out there, we need to figure out how to stop this from spreading further. But we also need allies, strong ones. No more fighting alone." Elias nodded in agreement. "I'll start reaching out to our contacts in the Expanse. There's a few factions, old as they are, that might have the resources or knowledge we need. We can't wait any longer. If the cycle is starting to unravel, we'll need every advantage we can get." Singh took a deep breath, her hands on her hips as she surveyed the star map. "It's going to be a long journey, a dangerous one. But if there's a chance to stop this, we're going to find it." As the crew prepared to move out, Elias couldn't shake the growing sense of dread that was tightening around his chest. The end cycle wasn't just a force of nature. It was a force that knew them, that had seen the potential in humanity to break it. And the more he studied the Erethnar's records, the more he realized something chilling. The cycle wasn't just coming for them. It was waiting for them to make the next move. The future was unfolding before him, and Elias wasn't sure whether he was leading humanity into its final chapter or its salvation. The Odyssey sailed deeper into the unknown, its destination a remote, uncharted system located at the fringe of explored space. Elias had sent out messages to every faction he could reach, but response times were slow, and the few replies they had received were cryptic at best. No one seemed to fully understand the nature of the end cycle, and those who did were either unwilling or unable to offer any help. It was becoming clearer that humanity was on its own. The only way forward was through the brutal path they had already set in motion. The crew had gathered in the briefing room, faces drawn with exhaustion but determined. The journey had taken its toll. Each of them was fighting against time, knowing that the longer they waited, the closer they came to the inevitable collapse of the galaxy's fragile balance. Captain Singh stood at the head of the table, her usual calm demeanor betraying a flicker of unease. "We've received word from the Seren Alliance," she said, turning to Elias. "They've agreed to meet us at the edge of the Jotari Nebula. They're a military faction, strong, but not exactly known for their cooperative nature. We'll need to approach them carefully." Elias nodded, though the skepticism in his gut gnawed at him. The Seren Alliance might be powerful, but they were also secretive and deeply mistrustful of outsiders. They had their own agenda, and he wasn't sure if their goals aligned with humanity's survival. But he also knew that they were one of the few forces strong enough to stand against whatever dark entities had been watching the cycle unfold for millennia. "We don't have much choice," Elias said quietly. "But we need to be careful. If they think we're trying to manipulate the cycle, or if they feel threatened by what we've discovered, we'll be in more danger than we can handle." Lena Ortiz, the ship's chief strategist, spoke up. "We should consider all options. The Seren Alliance might be a necessary ally, but we can't assume they'll just hand over whatever knowledge they have. We'll need to negotiate hard." Singh's eyes hardened with resolve. "This isn't just about negotiation. We're not walking into this meeting blind. I want our fleet ready. We're not just meeting the Seren Alliance. We are making our stand." Elias turned to the star map projected above the table. The Jotari Nebula loomed in the distance, a swirling mass of gas and radiation that hid the secrets of many lost civilizations. Within it was the Seren Alliance's last known outpost, a heavily fortified station hidden deep within the nebula's core. They were about to venture into the heart of it, and Elias couldn't shake the feeling that the true battle was only just beginning. "What happens if they refuse?" Elias asked, his voice low. Captain Singh met his gaze. "Then we'll have no choice but to make them listen." "The ship's Ceres," interrupted the tense silence. "Captain, I have detected an anomaly in the nebula. Unknown ships are moving toward the Seren station. It appears they're preparing for something." The room froze. The Seren Alliance was known for its secrecy, but this was a new development. Something was happening, and it was happening fast. "Status of the ships?" Singh asked, her voice tight. "Unknown," Ceres replied. "But their trajectory suggests a confrontation is imminent. They're not responding to our hails." Elias felt a chill run down his spine. The timing was too perfect. The Seren Alliance might be preparing for a conflict, but with what? And why? "We need to move now," Captain Singh said, her voice resolute. "Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Get us into the nebula fast." As the Odyssey shifted into high gear, plunging into the nebula's chaotic depths, Elias's mind raced. The Seren Alliance, the anomaly, none of it felt like coincidence. They had come this far, had uncovered the existence of the end cycle, but was the true danger the entities they'd awoken, or the galactic powers themselves, desperate to control something no one could fully understand? And then it hit him, a realization so stark and profound that it almost took his breath away. The Seren Alliance might not just be reacting to the cycle, they might already know it. They might have already been touched by it, driven to build a weapon, or worse, to manipulate the cycle for their own purposes. The galaxy wasn't just a battlefield for survival anymore. It was a game of power, where the stakes were nothing less than the future of reality itself. "We have to be ready for anything," Elias said, his voice firm. As the Odyssey pushed deeper into the nebula, the crew braced themselves for the unknown. There were no guarantees in the universe, no certainties. The end cycle was coming, and with it, everything they had fought for, everything they had uncovered, was on the line. The question now was simple. Would humanity survive the storm, or would they be swept away by the same fate that had claimed the Erithnar and every civilization that had come before them? As the stars twisted and the nebula's clouds swallowed them whole, Elias couldn't help but wonder, were they racing towards salvation or towards the final, inevitable end?